I once asked a friend of mine when she had gotten married. And she said to me, "We were married from the moment we decided that we would spend the rest of our lives building our love." And our wedding celebrated that. Another friend told me that his marriage happened over and over again. Every time that he and his wife confronted some problem in their relationship or in their family and decided again to make it work. I think we tend to think of big events that change us forever, like when we fell in love. Could be the day that you became a parent, or that you made a lifelong commitment called solemn vows. But the more we think about these events, the more we realize that they were at most signal moments, but really in a much bigger process. We can find the seeds of our new identity, our new sense of self, appearing before we had any idea of what they meant. And it's only in retrospect that we kind of discover that they were already there. They'd gotten our attention, but we didn't understand them. People become parents on the day of the birth or the adoption of their child, but they'll spend the rest of their days doing parenthood through their relationship with their kids. So anyone who has striven over time to remain faithful knows that a commitment expressed in a moment necessarily passes through a lifetime of growth and development. It happens over and over and over again. A deepening of that moment, of becoming more honest and true about who we are before God. And I think that's one of the dimensions of what the Scriptures present to us in this feast of Pentecost. Luke's account of Pentecost really comes at the culmination of 50 days. 50 days of post-resurrection appearances and instructions and waiting before the disciples experienced the fire and the Holy Spirit. According to John, in the gospel that we read today, he breathed his Spirit upon them on the first day of the week. So it was a fast 50 days. In reality, the Spirit's action in each of the apostles, in each of those disciples, that started much earlier. It started when they met Jesus for the first time and deepened each time that they acted in his name. On the day when the resurrected Christ first became present to them in their midst, the disciples were struggling to take in the fact that death wasn't the end. It was a whole new way of thinking about death and about life. Death wasn't what they thought it was. Jesus changed that. Jesus was risen. And he had come to them to offer them peace, as we heard a couple times in this gospel. And in the midst of their dizzying confusion, of course, what did they do when they were confused? They hid. They tried to get away. And Jesus wouldn't let them off the hook. He pursued them even then. And he says to them, "As the Father has sent me, so I have sent you." Again, he's not letting them off the hook. I don't care whether you're confused. You've got a mission, just like I had a mission. He was not simply forgiving them, but he was inviting them to share in their own relationship with God, with others. So just as God, the Creator, breathed on this, what we call the earth, and breathed his Spirit and brought it to life, so Jesus does the same thing with us. He breathes on us as he breathed on his disciples many years ago, suffusing them and us with his Spirit. and his mission. Then he gave them one necessary command, and this is what I think is really important for us today. He gave them one necessary command that would keep his mission alive in and through them. He said, forgive. That's hard. That's hard. The Feast of Pentecost celebrates a key moment in the Spirit's ever-renewing presence in our lives. And Pentecost functions like that moment and that movement that breaks down the boundaries of time and culture and history, and most of all, our settled and kind of certain attitudes. It blows those limits away. And they're epitomized in the ability and the willingness and the desire to forgive. The symbol of multiple languages that we heard in our first reading, multiple languages that divide us, everything that truncates communion if we let it happen to us. Our current culture of tribalism, factionalism, partisanship, name-calling is not terribly new. It happened 2,000 years ago. Pentecost proclaims that our God is a God who created this diversity and wants it to be used to bring people together, not to divide them, and to grow in a community with all of God's people. Paul's message in our second reading to the Corinthians says as much to us. The Spirit gives a variety of gifts without which we cannot be who we are, without which we cannot be truly holy. So if we want Pentecost to come alive to us today, today's scriptures tell us that forgiveness has got to be a key part of it. Got to be a key part of the mission that we have been given. We do it every time we start Eucharist, don't we? We seek reconciliation within our hearts, but also with others. It teaches us that that's key to who we are as a Pentecostal people. And so we need, first of all, to accept ourselves as beloved and forgiven sinners. Think about Pope Francis. Who is he as a Christian? He said, I'm a forgiven sinner. That's the starting point for all of us. Today's gospel demonstrates that knowing and accepting that truth about ourselves opens us to the Spirit. And according to the model of today's gospel, the second step in a Pentecost process is to become involved in reconciliation in our families, in our church, in our communities, by forgiving and being agents of forgiveness and reconciliation. Who we hope can help others to see that that is a possibility despite our differences. So Pentecost is a long process. It's not one Sunday in the year. It's a long process, but we fortunately have a very patient God.